This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Craig L. Hayes Show for part two of an independent judiciary. We just did part one just a little bit ago. I took a little 5-minute break to drink some water. My throat was getting a little parched there. But I want to come back to a couple questions and discuss a few things with you. And I had asked a question I kind of started talking about it before my throat started getting a little raspy and thirsty. It's okay right now, so we'll see how long that lasts. But anyways, the question was, why was an independent judiciary so important to our founding fathers? And why did they make sure that it was isolated from the politics as much as possible? Because they knew history. They knew and they watched what happened with King George as the ruler of America at that time, and they didn't want to repeat it. Remember, King George had a parliament. King George had judges. But the parliament could sit there and make a rule, a law, or whatever like that, and King George could say, no, change it and turn it into this, and they'd have to do that. Judges could sit there and say, well, the government, being you, King George, you kind of went too far on a couple things or such, and you need not to do that. And he'd say, no, never mind, I'm going to do what I want, and you guys are all going to jail for fighting against me for sedition and treason. Our founding fathers knew this was the system of most of the world at that time and had been the history of the world for thousands of years. That there wasn't an independent judiciary that put checks and balances into a system against a king. They were not going to allow that to happen here. They were not going to allow that to be what America turned into also. We weren't to have any kings on this soil. We were to have liberty and freedom. So that part of it, they knew the dangers if they didn't put a system of checks and balance into it and allow another, basically throw off one monarchy to get another monarchy. That would not be too bright on our part, would it? So here's a question for us. Actually, here's two questions. First question with a definition. How does the right, the people of the Constitution, define an independent judiciary? Well, it's easy. The Constitution is followed. Well, I don't know what else you can say about it, but the Constitution is followed. Its original intent is applied and is followed as being the supreme law of the land. So that's how the right would, or the constitutionalists would define the independent independent judiciary. How does the left define a independent judiciary? Well, that's a little bit more interesting. The left wants the laws that they create in Congress or and sign to be followed with exactness, and there can be no constitutional restraints by the federal judges. No laws could be followed other than those crafted by the Democrats, no matter how. Let's see, how do I say this? No matter what laws they pass, they want it followed. They don't want any judicial restraints. They don't want the courts saying that you can't do that. In other words, they want a monarchy. They want it to be just like it was under King George. Is that what we really want to go back to? Is that what we're, the more things change, the more things they stay the same, and especially when you have the ideology of enslavement and and tyranny, which is nothing other than the Democrat Party. That's all we get. So, anyways, oh yeah, I wrote down this thing too. Also, they want the federal judiciary, the Supreme Court, to always rule on anything that they desire. They want their personal desires to be codified into law and validated by the Supreme Court. That's not very healthy. When we lose the sight and the line of the Constitution, we end up with places such as New York City, that laws are violated, rights are violated. All we have to do is watch Donald Trump going through what he has, and we can see that the Constitution isn't being followed by these judges. The laws aren't being followed. He is being persecuted and prosecuted because he would stand up to the Democrats. He would stand up to the swamp. He would stand up to the establishment. They don't like that. And they will use everything they can, regardless. It's the Constitution. Democrats don't care about the Constitution. Please understand that. They don't care about the Constitution unless the Constitution makes it valid for them to use the Constitution to destroy it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, you guys. I have a question here. What happens when a nation does not have an independent judiciary system, and that the judges are loyal to the party or to the dictator or whoever's in charge at that time? Well, we can see that all over the country, all over the world, sorry. It's called China. It's called North Korea. It's called Venezuela. It's called Brazil. It's called Nicaragua. And so many other places in this world. That's what happens. That's what Venezuela did. The people who was it Chavez took over Venezuela. One of the first things he did is got rid of the Supreme Court people that would disagree with him and packed it with complete people who would vote for him and allow him to do it. That way he could take and rule as a dictator and go to this way. Well, if you don't like what I'm doing, let's take it to the court. And the court would say, no, you're doing just fine. How convenient. That's what's done in Cuba. That's what's done in China. Is that what we want here? Is that what you want to have happen in our nation? And then what happens when they have the judiciary? They have full power, they have control, they have everything that they need as far as they have if there are 3 branches of government in their system, they have 2 of them completely under their control. As long as they have the judges and as long as they have the administration or the presidency, they can do anything they want because the judges will uphold anything they do, no matter what the legislature does. So that's where they all went with this. And is it possible this could happen here? Well. I think we've already seen this with Donald Trump in, like we said, in New York and other places. The federal bureaucracy coming after him with everything they have on bogus lies and deceit from the Democrat Party being used as reasons to prosecute a former president of the United States. But remember, the stuff that you're seeing and the stuff you'll hear about in this country is called reform, judicial reform. The Democrats want to reform the Supreme Court of the United States. And how are they going to do that? They want to put 6 more justices of their choosing on the Supreme Court. That would mean they would have all the time at least 9. 9 of the 15 would be loyal to the Democrat Party, not to the Constitution, not to the people, but to the Democrat Party. What kind of disaster would that be in our country, knowing that the Democrat Party is nothing more than a Marxist Marxist ideological party, loyal to socialism, Marxism, communism, Islamism, whatever thing that would destroy this country and turn it into where you're basically slaves. Remember, the Democrat Party is nothing but a party of slaves. They love slavery. That's what they were founded on. But we have to do our part. We have to try to stop this any way, shape, or form that we can. We can't allow them to destroy the Supreme Court of the United States. You've got to be aware, you've got to get involved, and you've got to say something and tell people what's going on, and you have to vote. I know voting is probably the easiest thing you can do. It happens once every 2 years, but it is so critical. It is so critical to keep the Democrats, or the Marxists, they call themselves Democrats, out of power. We can't allow them to do these things. If we don't stop the Supreme Court coup, and that's what this is going to be, it's called packing the courts. Biden wants to do it. Schumer wants to do it. Fortunately, we have enough people in the House of Representatives that will not allow it to happen, because this has to be approved with the House of Representatives too. And Mike Johnson, I'm not very impressed with you, but you better hold firm to this one no matter what, and not let our country be destroyed because you want to go along to get along. But here's what the Democrats want to do. They want to add, like I said, the 6 justices. I wrote these down. They want to make sure that you have to have 2/3 of the Supreme Court, not just a simple majority, but they want to have 2/3 of the Supreme Court to overturn any legislation that the Democrats pass. That would be almost impossible. That would make it so difficult to get anything to happen to stop tyranny. It wouldn't even be funny. And then they also want to take and have a yearly audit by the IRS on all federal judges, especially the ones on the Supreme Court. This is a factor of intimidation. This is how they would keep people that are good people out of there, and people who just don't really care about any of this to go in there and vote the way they want them to, as long as they're going to be in there. And they also would love to have to where there's no consent and approval by the Senate. In other words, the president just picks out who he wants to go in there. And that's who it's going to be, no matter how crazy the people are. It doesn't matter. And the people who the Senate would have no say in that whatsoever. They would just go on in. Can you imagine a Kamala Harris or Joe Biden being unrestricted, and who they could pick and who they could appoint? We would end up with like Merrick Garland, who's the head of the Justice Department right now, and we've seen what he has done in the Justice Department. He's weaponized the Justice Department and the FBI against political opponents that are conservative or Republican, especially Donald Trump. These are the people that Joe Biden would love to have been able to put in, and these are the people that a Kamala Harris would put in if she was president. This election is critical. This election is so important, people. It's just not your taxes. It's just not your ability to live the life that you want. It's not that you can go to work for 8 hours a day and then go home and enjoy your family and go to a baseball game and just have a good time. That's not what this election is about. Other than if you don't take care of business, your opportunities, your liberties, and your freedom will probably be diminished more and more over the 4 years that Kamala Harris is president. She already has said She has already talked about her mainstream piece of legislation when she went into the Senate was do no harm. And that was basically a way to take and diminish religious freedoms and liberties in this country in favor of abortion rights. Basically telling people who stand up for life that if they were to oppose it, that would be a crime, a thought crime. Don't sit there and laugh. Don't sit there and think, oh, that's crazy. People haven't being persecuted or prosecuted for thought crimes. It's happening in England right now. A man walked down the street and prayed for his son who had been killed in the military. And it was on a street where there was an abortion clinic. The police came up to him and arrested him because they said he was praying to have abortion stopped in the United Kingdom. It was a silent prayer. So now the police can read minds. And the crazy part about it is judges upheld and put the man in jail for just doing that. You don't think they won't do that here. There are people serving 10 years because they thought they prayed outside and they held a sign that's saying don't kill the babies on the sidewalk outside of an abortion clinic. And the FBI came and arrested them, and now they're in jail for 10 years for violating some bogus law that the Democrats had passed about access to abortion clinics. Your rights of free speech, your rights to religion, your rights to gather, to petition the government, to have a media like the Craig L. Hayes Show, which is a news show, opinion show, but also news, will be diminished or dismantled by a Kamala Harris presidency and the Democrat Party. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to stand there or sit there and just say, well, what I do isn't that important? Have you not learned anything yet? That you are an individual. And this country was based on protecting the individual, not groups. Nothing in the Constitution talks about groups. It's about individual rights. It's about individual liberties, individual opportunities, individual desires. You can do something. Tell a friend. Get out there and vote. Grab your friends. Tell them to vote the right way. Tell them to vote for liberty and freedom and not for tyranny. Do your part. I'll do mine. I'll keep doing these until they take me off the web and tell me that I'm being a criminal and I'm going to go to jail or whatever. Bring it on, but come heavy. I don't surrender. And you shouldn't either. Stand up for yourself. Stand up and fight. Trump said fight, fight, fight after he got shot. Did you get shot? Did you get someone try to kill you? No. All you have to do is vote. Get out there and vote. End the tyranny of the Democrat Party by voting for somebody else. It's just that simple. Well, that's this episode, the second episode of An Independent Judiciary. I hope you learned something. I certainly do learn something out of every one of these podcasts I do. And until I see you on the next one, take it away, Talbot.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.